What if I told you there's a book so disturbing, it was hidden for more than 100 years, written in a prison cell, by a man whose name would become a synonym for cruelty? The author, Marquis de Sade. The title, The 120 Days of Sodom. This isn't just a story. It's a descent into the darkest corners of human desire, and the mind of a man who refused to bow to morality.
Sensei, this is going to be fun. Darklings, this isn't bedtime reading. This is the kind of book that claws into your head and doesn't let go. And yes, I'll defend it. Because sometimes, to understand the darkness, you have to walk through it.
Before we tear it apart page by page, you need to know where it came from. The year is 1785. De Sade is locked inside the Bastille prison. A nobleman turned criminal, accused of blasphemy, sexual crimes, and acts that made even the French court shiver. In that cold cell, on a scroll made from scraps of paper, he wrote the most extreme, most obscene manuscript in history. The author of the 120 Days of Sodom is the infamous Marquis de Sade. Born in 1740 in Paris, he was not just a writer, but a man whose life was steeped in scandal, imprisonment, and relentless controversy. His works didn't merely push boundaries, they shattered them. Even in an era when society was far more repressive, his stories of cruelty, sexuality, and philosophical rebellion stood out as dangerous.
Dangerous? Or deliciously honest, Sensei? I mean, he only wrote what others secretly thought.
That's exactly what made him both feared and fascinating, Elizabeth. His writing wasn't meant to comfort, it was meant to confront. During his lifetime, de Sade spent nearly 3 decades in prisons and asylums, not for murder or treason, but for moral crimes, as judged by the standards of his time.
Oh, so he was punished for being too naughty with a pen. I can relate.
I'm sure you can. But here's the important part. The 120 Days of Sodom was written while he was imprisoned in the Bastille. Imagine this, a cold, damp cell, the distant sound of chains, and by candlelight, a man scribbling one of the most extreme pieces of literature in history on a scroll over 12 meters long.
That's commitment, or obsession. Which one do you think it was, Sensei?
Both. And that obsession is the key to understanding this book, and maybe the man himself. To understand why Marquis de Sade wrote the 120 Days of Sodom, we have to step into his mind, and into his era. 18th century France was a world of rigid morality on the surface, but behind closed doors, it was rife with corruption, hypocrisy, and hidden decadence. De Sade saw it all. He despised the church's authority, the monarchy's control, and the pretense of virtue in the upper classes. Writing was his weapon, his rebellion. By creating a story filled with extreme cruelty, sexuality, and moral collapse, he was holding up a mirror to the society he hated.
A very bloody, twisted mirror.
Yes, but every scene, no matter how shocking, was meant to strip away illusions. And here's where it gets interesting. His name lives on in the word sadism, the idea of taking pleasure in the suffering of others. That tells you just how powerful and feared his reputation became.
So, if I enjoy watching my enemies squirm, does that make me a little Elizabeth de Sade?
Only a little. But the difference is, de Sade didn't just enjoy the thought, he made it into philosophy. His works argued that human beings are driven by desire, not morality, and that denying that truth was the real crime.
Sounds like he wasn't just writing smut, he was making a point, a dangerous point.
Exactly. For de Sade, the scandal was the message. The 120 Days of Sodom wasn't meant to be comfortable. It was meant to burn away the lies people tell themselves about what's good or evil. Now, the 120 Days of Sodom. On the surface, it's a story about 4 powerful men who isolate themselves in a remote castle for 4 months. But this isn't a vacation, it's an experiment. They bring with them a carefully chosen group of people, and the book follows the strict, methodical way they plan to explore the darkest corners of human nature. The structure is almost like a scientific study. Each day has its own theme, and each event is carefully documented. But instead of studying kindness or love, they push their subjects into situations designed to strip away morality entirely.
So, kind of like a reality show from hell.
In a way, yes. But it's important to understand de Sade wasn't glorifying what happened in the story. He was showing what human beings are capable of when power has no limits and morality is erased. The book is shocking, yes, but it's also a warning. It asks, if you could do anything without consequence, what would you do? And more importantly, what would that say about you?
Dangerous question, Sensei. You might not like the answers people give.
That's exactly why the book still matters. It forces us to confront parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. The book is divided into 4 phases, each one a step further into a place where light cannot reach. The first feels almost like an unsettling theater. Roles are given, rules are set, and everyone plays their part, though the smiles never reach the eyes. The second strips away illusions. Respect, dignity, safety, all become currency to be taken and spent at will. It's the point where a game stops feeling like one. The third is a season that never ends, where frost forms not on windows, but inside the human spirit. Here obedience isn't asked for, it's carved in. And the fourth is the place where the mask is gone entirely. Rites are performed, ceremonies after which some never wake again. It's the end of the descent, where not even names remain, only silence.
So, it's like each step takes them further into a dream they can't wake up from?
More like a nightmare, one they stopped trying to escape. When the 120 days first emerged, it wasn't greeted with applause, but with locked doors. Entire countries placed it on their forbidden shelves, a work too dark, too corrosive, they said, for the public to touch. Libraries whispered its name, if at all, and copies vanished from storefronts overnight. In some places, possessing it was seen as a provocation, as if the pages themselves could spread unrest, twisting minds into something unrecognizable.
Which only makes people want it more, right, Darklings?
Exactly. The ban didn't erase it, it gave it fangs. The book became an underground currency, passed hand to hand in quiet rooms, read by candlelight or on crumbling photocopies. And why the outrage? Because it didn't just depict cruelty, it held up a mirror, suggesting that in the right cage, in the right storm, anyone might step across the line. It forced readers to wonder, are monsters born or made? Today, it still wears that crown of controversy. In some countries, it's studied as literature. In others, it's locked away like a dangerous relic. And yet, it keeps calling to those willing to look into the abyss and see what looks back.
And some of us can't look away.
The 1220 Days isn't just a story. It's a descent. A slow walk down a staircase where every step strips away something human. For most readers, there's a moment, sometimes early, sometimes far too late, when they realize they're no longer looking at characters, but at creatures. Not born as such, but reshaped. Many who've read it describe an odd effect. It doesn't just shock you, it dulls you. Scene by scene, the extremes stop feeling extreme. The horror becomes routine. And in that numbness comes the most disturbing realization.
You start to understand them.
Exactly. And that's where the danger lies. The book doesn't just show darkness. It invites you to sit in it, breathe it in, and notice that you're still breathing. For most, that's too far. Beyond art, beyond morality, into a place where empathy erodes and you start asking the wrong questions. But that's also why some defend it. Because it forces the reader to confront what they don't want to admit. The human mind can adapt to almost anything, even the unthinkable. And once you've crossed that mental threshold, you can't truly go back.
And maybe that's why it scares them more than any monster ever could.
My opinion? I think everyone who craves power should read this book at least once. Not because I want you to repeat what happens inside it, far from it, but because it's the extreme of what power can become. When wealth and influence reach a certain height, there are no rules left, no limits, and that is both fascinating and terrifying.
It's like staring at a mirror that shows the darkest possible version of you.
Exactly. And I hope no one watching this ever walks that far down the path. But sometimes, to understand power, you need to see what lies at its very end. That's all for today's dive into the shadows. If you've made it this far, you're already stronger than most. Remember, knowledge is power, but knowing the cost of that power, that's wisdom.
Oh, and don't forget to subscribe, my sweet Darklings. Who knows? Maybe I'll write a sequel to 120 Days of Sodom, with you as the main characters.